自2018年3月22日，时任美国总统的川普根据美国国内法，要求美国贸易代表对从中国进口商品征收关税，吹响美中贸易战开打的号角，让关税一度成为美国整治中国的紧箍咒。这场历时数年的贸易战，发球的川普原本只是想迫使中国改变不公平贸易行为，却没想到在拜登抢到发球权后，局势批变。随着多项高针对性与限制性的关税政策出炉后，美中贸易战朝向一个奇异的方向发展。
I want competition with China, not conflict.
I would impose tariffs to confront China's massive theft of America's jobs.
The rhetoric that you hear from Donald Trump and Joe Biden on trade with China, it's similar in a lot of important ways. They share the same overall philosophy, which is that the U.S. has done too much of it in the past.
President Biden and Donald Trump are both issuing blueprints to compete against China, disrupting the free trade status quo Washington has held for decades.
President Trump has gone all in. President Biden has been more targeted.
Biden's trying to push back EVs coming to China, trying to push back solar coming to China, from China to the US. Is that really got any bite to it? It seems more like bark right now.
Yes, no, this is a really strong move from the Biden administration. As you noted, the reports are saying that they are thinking of quadrupling the tariff rate on Chinese EVs. As we know, China has rocketed to become the top producer of EVs in just the last few years. They struggled for a long time to build a competitive auto export industry, and now they have gotten there with EVs. So currently, U.S. automakers are insulated by the existing Trump-era tariffs, which are about 27.5%. But clearly, the Biden administration is concerned that going forward, China could use its dumping strategy to underprice U.S. automakers and flood the market, as they are already doing in Europe and elsewhere.
But based on what you just said, I don't get it. I checked, okay, and there are 4 China-made EVs that retail in this country at incredibly small volumes. Polestar 2 and 4, the new Lotus that's coming, and the Volvo EX30. But what's the point in the tariff if those are the only 4 models available and they only sell in very small numbers?
The Biden administration is trying to get ahead of the flood. So as you noted, right now, we are insulated. American consumers are, by and large, not buying Chinese EVs. They're not coming into our market, but I think they see the writing on the wall.
Obviously, China will come up during the campaign. It has always come up in every presidential campaign. Each of the candidates will try to portray a tougher stance than the other. The problem with President Trump is, as your correspondent indicated, he's proposing up to 60% tariffs. That's a tax, 60% tax on all items coming from China. And in fact, not just coming from China, but tariffs or taxes on all goods coming from around the country. The Biden administration has been, while it has kept the Trump tariffs in place, it has been very strategic in making sure that China does not get a hold of things that it could use to strengthen its military. The Biden administration is restricting exports of high-tech goods, even the equipment to manufacture high-tech goods, restricting biologics going into China, AI, to make sure that these things cannot be used by the military or to suppress some of the populations with China.
We have a huge trade problem. We have deficits with over 105 countries. We're going after the biggest one. But, that leaves, 100-plus countries that still have significant imbalances with the United States. And as we squeeze the Chinese piece, that portion of our deficit goes to them. And they're higher-cost producers, and that taxes American consumers. So what are we doing with trade policy? Do we actually have a clue, a strategy as to what we're trying to accomplish?
Politicians, they see the word trade deficit and they start running and they start trying to put a positive spin. As an economist, do you think having a trade deficit is a bad thing?
For politicians most of whom have never taken an economics class, trade deficits are bad. But the point that I have made to our friendly politicians in Washington is that the trade deficit really is on their backs by running massive budget deficits. The United States is suppressing domestic saving, forcing us to import surplus savings from abroad, and running massive trade deficits to attract the capital. So you want to fix the trade deficit, Mr. Politician, look in the mirror and fix the budget deficit in the United States.
美中贸易战在拜登上任之后，始终没有放松迹象。今年6月举行的 G7 峰会上，拜登更是呼吁大家团结。盟友们表态跟进对中国的征收关税政策，结果是美中贸易战转进 Round 2。可这一回合拿到发球权的，不是美国，也不是欧盟或其他西方国家。
We will be introducing a 100% tariff on Chinese-made electric vehicles.
Beijing, on the other hand, has slammed this move. It has called it protectionism. Now, Canada is not the first country to do something like this. The US imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs in the month of May. The European Union, too, has hiked tariffs on Chinese cars. So this move by Canada is part of a wider battle between the West and China.
On August 15th this year, China announced that it would impose export restrictions on rare metals, super hard materials, and related technologies, including antimony, starting from September 15th. Their reason is that this is just a decision made in accordance with international practice and in combination with the actual needs of the country in order to better safeguard national security.
As the United States and its European allies put 25% to 100% tariffs on some Chinese commodities, they did not anticipate a powerful retaliation that would hit them where it hurts the most, their military capabilities. China has just put a restriction on exports of antimony, a key raw element. This new embargo is in addition to the current ban on gallium and germanium exports, which was announced a little over a year ago.
根据日经中文网去年12月的一篇报道，中国在加强对涉及高科技领域的稀缺资源管理上正在做功课。这不是第一次对其他国家释放危机感。早在2010年，中国因为对立而暂停稀土对日本的出口，就已经让日本跟美国尝到苦果。这一次，中国对全球寄出的不单是稀土的出口限制，还包含冶炼和分离技术的限制输出。站在美国的立场，钳制中国的科技发展、军事壮大与经济成长是至关重要的事，但是中国不会老处于挨打的状态，这也是想当然尔的事。
In the distribution of global antimony resources, China accounts for about 30% of the share, with reserves of nearly 640,000 tons, making China the country with the largest antimony resource reserves in the world. Most of the other antimony resources are distributed in Russia, Tajikistan, and Turkey, which account for about 16%, 25%, and 7% of the global reserves respectively. However, antimony mining faces the dual challenges of high pollution and resource depletion, and other countries have encountered many difficulties in the development of antimony mining. In contrast, China maintains a leading edge in antimony mining and extraction technology. Of course, China now controls about 80% of the world's antimony metal processing capacity. So even if other countries have antimony or resources, they usually choose to transport the ore to China for processing because China has a complete industrial chain and the world's most advanced processing technology. In addition to its advantages in reserves and processing capabilities, China also accounts for about 48% of the global antimony ore production, and smelting production accounts for as much as 71% of the global total. With such advantages, most countries need to rely more or less on importing antimony resources from China when developing military weapons.
中国这项稀土管理条例对一般人来说可能是无感。但是在稀有金属已经成为能源战略物资的今天，这项宣布无疑对高科技产业以及军事工业投下致命的震撼弹。政治人物暂时可以躲在新闻的背后不发表意见，但是对整体经济造成的损失却不能不提前预做准备。以之前中国限制镓鱼者的出口来说， 这两种稀有金属在军事设备与半导体生产方面是相当重要的关键原料。如今再加上限制锑的出口，这对全球最大军火出产国的美国来说，绝对是比卡脖子还要难受的事。
Antimony is a vital raw material for a wide range of commercial and military applications, including fuel, munitions, and explosives manufacturing. Antimony is also used in semiconductors. Therefore, in addition to having a direct effect on military industrial production capacities, it will harm the United States' efforts to become a semiconductor manufacturing leader.
According to the current development trend, the United States' annual demand for metallic antimony is about 30,000 tons. In February 2023 alone, the United States imported 2,780 tons of antimony oxide.
I think the U.S. and Europe have come together around China policy much more closely than they've ever been. And between the domestic investments made by the Biden administration in chips and in EVs and other areas, as well as some of the hard actions taken to maintain technology dominance in the United States, I think the U.S. is in a stronger position.
Imposing export curbs is, of course, a sensible step given the escalating geopolitical tensions between the West and China. What it will most likely achieve is a direct influence on the Western military and its ability to grow output for militarized objectives.
Some U.S. lawmakers are worried that if they can no longer rely on imports in the future, domestic antimony reserves may be exhausted before 2025. Data from 2023 showed that U.S. military equipment sales to foreign governments increased by 16%. Especially in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the United States provided a large amount of weapons support to Ukraine, which directly pushed the sales of military equipment to a record high of $238 billion that year. Moreover, in addition to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the United States has also provided weapons support to the new round of conflicts in Palestine and Israel, as well as participated in arms sales and small-scale wars in other regions.
I mean, I think that from the Chinese perspective, we had a lot of reporting on this, and I've met with Chinese companies operating in Europe that sort of are thinking about this going forward. They really see basically no difference between Biden and Trump and don't really have a huge preference about who comes into the White House. They both see it as, intensely negative for China. Trump, of course, has vowed 60% tariffs across the board. What I think is interesting in the latest development is now the appointment of J.D. Vance as the potential VP pick. In one of his first interviews, he was asked about Ukraine, because obviously this is top front and center. But he wants to basically bring that to a close, he says, very rapidly, so America can focus on the real issue, which is China.
中国这一记瞄准西方心脏袭来的强劲发球，美国跟西方阵营有想好一应的对策了吗？美洲贸易战有没有转圜或是喘息的空间呢？近期，美国 Faro Globe 公司事务副总裁 Bill Heider 在 Power Magazine 发表一篇文章，当中提到另一个一般人无感，可是影响却很广泛的问题。就是中国主导太阳能供应链的所有环节，而制造太阳能板的关键原料有一项叫做金属系。目前，中国拥有全球金属系市场 75% 的份额。如果因为贸易争端、政治对立或其他因素，而使得太阳能供应链出现变化，一旦中断了金属系的来源，或是升高金属系的进口成本，都将可能成为美国发展太阳能产业的绊脚石，阻碍美国实现再生能源目标的进展。